Redeeming Love is DJ Caruso's 2022 historical romance film starring Abigail Cohen and Tom Lewis, and it's a retelling of the biblical story of Hosea set in the California gold rush of 1850. I am really excited to talk about this film because I've been waiting on it for so very long. I'm a big fan of the book, and originally I actually wasn't planning on making a video about this, but after having seen the movie yesterday on opening night, I've got to say, I've got some stuff I want to talk about, and I thought I'd make a video, upload it on here, and see if we could get some people talking about this movie. Because first and foremost, I have got to say, I absolutely loved this movie, and that's just going to be your spoiler warning right off the bat. Actually, there are going to be some spoilers in this, but I am going to save the spoilers for the very end of this video, specifically when we start talking about the biblical content that is addressed in this, because in order to break down the biblical stuff, I'm going to want to talk about the plot a little bit more in depth than I'm going to at the beginning. So, if you're afraid of spoilers, don't watch the end of this video. I'll give you a spoiler warning, but if you're just wanting a review of the movie, you can start here and go ahead. But, spoiler for myself, I really like this movie, thought it was fantastic, and I think in order for us to properly understand why I thought this movie was so good, you have to understand, first and foremost, my relationship to this book right here, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, originally published in 1991. I first read this book back in spring break 2015. It was the spring break of my senior year of high school, and there was actually this girl I'd been dating at the time. She's the one who recommended it to me, and I read it, and it's probably one of the books I have read the fastest in my life, just because it was based on, it was like a biblical fiction, right, which is already interesting to me. I already gravitate towards stuff like that because I love, like, biblical fiction in the sense of, you know, historical retellings of biblical stories, but I thought it was very fascinating how Francine Rivers didn't just retell the story of Hosea, but she also just didn't retell the story in the modern day. Rather, it's a historical fiction where she took the story of Hosea, dropped it into the California gold rush of 1850, and decided to tell the story there. That was a very interesting premise to me. I've always been a big fan of the book of Hosea. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm actually planning on doing a series through the prophets in the Old Testament coming up very soon. I've been preparing for that a whole lot, and so we'll be going through Hosea. But I've been a big fan of the book of Hosea for the longest time. And so whenever I heard about this book, my mom's the one who also told me about it. She'd read it a long time ago, whenever it first gotten published, I'm pretty sure. And so I had different people telling me to read this book, and so spring break of 2015, I sat down, I read this book. I remember we were on a trip to Las Vegas or something like that, and in the car ride, I just could not put this book down. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really interesting. It was different from a lot of other Christian fiction that I'd read. If you've been watching this channel long enough, you know that by and large, I've been very disappointed by a lot of Christian entertainment and a lot of Christian art because I think that it's really not as well done as it really should be. But this book is something that I thought was really well done. It was really tastefully told, and I think that the story told in the book really does encapsulate the biblical message of Hosea. It's mainly, I'll admit, it's predominantly focused on the first 3 chapters of Hosea because that's the part of the book that is narrative, whereas the rest of Hosea is more like just like him getting on to people. So it's predominantly based off of the first 3 chapters of Hosea, and it's obviously very expansive and stuff, but it really captures the heart of the book very well, and so I always really appreciated that about Redeeming Love. And the reason why I like this movie so well is because the movie did this book justice. The synopsis of the movie, the official synopsis, is this. Based on the international bestseller by Francine Rivers, Redeeming Love is a powerful retelling of the biblical book of Hosea set against the romantic backdrop of the California gold rush of 1850. It is a life-changing story of the power of unconditional and all-consuming love. Coming to theaters January 21st, 2022, Redeeming Love shows that there is no brokenness that love can't heal. And I think that this movie absolutely lived up to that promise. I think that this movie totally delivered in all the ways that I wanted it to. I will admit that I went into this movie very skeptical because in regards to Christian entertainment, I've kind of developed this mentality of expecting disappointment. That sounds very cynical, but it's just honest. That's why I've been making all these videos about like The Chosen and stuff like that. Sorry, right here, The Chosen. I made stuff about The Chosen because that is a show where I can really get behind, where I think they're actually doing something really good and really valuable with Christian entertainment. But by and large, whenever I look at most Christian art out in the world, whether it be books, movies, even music, I think that Christians really need to step their game up, and we need to start producing better things. We serve this amazing God. We should produce amazing stuff. And so by and large, I kind of go into things with this expectation disappointment, especially with a book that I've treasured so dearly. And honestly, having seen the movie, I kind of want to reread it again. But especially with a book that I treasured so dearly, I kind of went into the theater expecting to be disappointed because I thought there was no way that they were going to actually be able to put to screen all the things that I loved so much about the book. And so I went in there kind of expecting it to not be nearly as well done as it was. And honestly, I really didn't have any idea of what the budget of this film was going to be. And usually when you see a lot of Christian films, they can make a trailer, like a movie trailer that looks really, really good. But then you go watch the movie and you're like, oh wow, they just took a 2-hour movie that's pretty bad and they found 2 minutes of good stuff and put it in the trailer. But that was not the case with this movie. This movie is shot well. It's directed well. It is just a very well-made movie with, like, the actors do a fantastic job. And so I just wanted to walk through those different things and give praise to them for doing a fantastic job. And then ultimately at the end of this video, we'll talk a little bit about the biblical stuff because that's the stuff that really makes me happy. And I kid you not, I left that theater in a worshipful state, because even though it was not over the top with the message of the gospel, right? Which I think that you can be, but I think the gospel was still preached in a very powerful way. I mean, yes, obviously, as a Christian, you would love for them to very clearly say, Jesus Christ came and died for your sins. But the cool thing about the story of Hosea is that, both in the Bible and the story of Michael, Hosea, and Redeeming Love, is that you have this character who is living out God's relationship to his people. And so, even though you don't have the explicit gospel message being stated in this movie or in the book, you do have it being lived out through this character of Michael, Hosea, and his relationship to this woman named Angel. And that's what I love so much about this, because whenever you watch the movie or you read the book, you're left thinking, man, this guy is amazing. Why would any girl pass up on this guy? And that's how we should feel about God, because you should wonder, why is he so good? And then you look into it and you say, oh, it's based off the book of Hosea. Let me go read Hosea. Oh, Hosea is trying to personify what God is doing. And then ultimately it leads you back to God. And so if you reflect on the story enough, it'll ultimately lead you back to the gospel. And so I thought it was really well done. I thought the actors did an amazing job. I think the director did an amazing job. I think that the cinematographer did an amazing job. And I started realizing that this was going to be the case literally from the first 20 seconds of this movie. Usually the opening of a movie, you can kind of tell how the rest of it's going to go. And immediately within the first 20 seconds of this movie, just how it started out, how it opened up, it opens up with this guy. This isn't really a spoiler. It's the first scene of the movie. It's with a guy finding gold, right? There's a guy who's finding gold during the California gold rush. It's just establishing the scene and the setting of the world we're about to enter into. And the way that that scene was shot, I immediately knew, oh man, I'm going to like this movie, because I could tell it had a good budget. The acting was good. It was well shot. It was well framed. I was like, buckle up. I think this might be a very, very good movie. The person I saw it with, I leaned over, I told him that too. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this movie. The direction by DJ Caruso, that is the director of this film. And I would say that they did a absolutely fantastic job in regards to the direction, because what they did here, and I'm just drawing attention to this because it's different from how they did it in the book. In the book, you get this character named Angel, right? She's one of the main characters of the book. She probably is the single main character of the book. Most editions of the book have her on the cover. Angel is the female love interest in this story. And in the book, her backstory is told in a very lengthy introduction/prologue at the very beginning of the book. And I was wondering how they were going to adapt that to the screen, whether or not they were going to just put that big backstory right at the beginning, or if they were going to intersperse it. And I think that they made a wise decision in deciding to intersperse it throughout the story, because that was a very compelling way to tell it in movie format that changes things up a little bit from the book. I think really the way they were presented in both mediums, I think that's the proper way. Because in the book, you want to know that backstory entering into Angel's story later on, so you know why she's doing the things she's doing. In the movie, they kind of give her this air of mystery where you just see there's this beautiful girl that all the guys are gawking at, and you're wondering, how did she get where she's at? And so throughout the movie, you just slowly get little more puzzle pieces coming together, and it kind of fleshes out her character as you're going. Because really, for the first half of this story, the present day Angel, she's a prostitute, and really her character is very dead inside. And so you don't get to see a lot of emotion from her. And so if you gave all the story at the beginning and then you just went straight into that, you might not connect with the character as much, because she isn't given as much to do in the first half of the film. And so I like that they interspersed the flashbacks throughout there because it allows you to connect to the character as you're going, and you're understanding why she's so distant from people, why she's so disconnected, why even whenever her and the other prostitutes are sitting there drinking their alcohol, why is she more quiet? Why is she just smirking and laughing but not really actually participating in the conversation? What makes her so distant from everybody else? And so I thought that I thought that the director made a very good choice there, and the writers behind it, the people who did all the script and stuff, I think they did a very good job in choosing to intersperse those flashbacks throughout it, but also in the book. I think that it should be in the introduction there. So I thought that was really well done. Let's talk about the actors, because I thought that they did absolutely fantastic, and this also gives us an opportunity to talk about the different characters in the story. First and foremost, we have Abigail Cohen as Angel. This is an actress I had never seen before, but I will be watching out for her in future stuff because I thought she did a fantastic job in this. She's given a lot to do because Angel goes through some major stuff throughout this whole story. And if you've read the book, you know that. If you've seen the movie, you'll know that even more. Because she has to go through some severe stuff here. And so the actress gets some opportunities to show, you know, very happy moments, very sad moments, very tragic moments, very angry moments. She gets to see all this stuff. But she does it in a way that really does encapsulate the character of Angel in a way that's very similar to, honestly, how I pictured it when I'm reading the book. And so that's one thing I do want to say. They went above and beyond with the acting here, where I cannot imagine them casting better people for any of these different parts, because I thought it basically, what I saw in the film is almost exactly how I pictured it when I read the book a few years ago, like 7 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of how I pictured it. And so that made me enjoy the movie all the more, because literally seeing these actors and actresses play out these characters was almost exactly how I pictured it in my own imagination. And so that really helped, because I'm actually going to have a definitive way to see my imagination playing out on screen. But Abigail Cohen did a fantastic job. Angel's a very intriguing character because, like I said, she has this tragic backstory. And we'll talk about the younger actress who plays young Angel in a little bit. But Angel's just a very intriguing character because she's so broken. That's literally the whole point of this book. It's called, or the book and movie, it's called Redeeming Love. It is about her being redeemed by Michael Hosea's love. She is this broken and tragic figure who has gone through some terrible stuff. She finds herself in a terrible situation. She wants to get out, but at the same time, she's closed herself off against everybody around her and everybody who's trying to get in because she doesn't trust anybody. And so she's a very interesting person where you're just wanting her to open up and give herself to this guy, yet she refuses to, and she makes a lot of really aggravating choices that could very easily make her unlikable. But the actress plays her in such a way to where you understand where she's coming from, and you never dislike Angel. I will admit, whenever I read the book, Angel does some stuff where in the book I'm like, man, I just want to smack you, if I'm being honest. I'm like, geez, woman. And that's why you admire Michael Hosea, because he just handles things so well. But Angel does some stuff in the book where you're like, man, you're just frustrated with her. And you get frustrated with her in the movie, but the actress plays Angel in such a relatable and likable way that even though she's doing frustrating things, you still care for her and you still want what's best for her. And so I thought that was good. Then we get Tom Lewis as Michael Hosea. I believe this is his like feature film debut. And I gotta be honest, he carries this film. I thought he did a great job. From the moment he's introduced, I was like, yeah, this guy is Michael Hosea. He doesn't look how I pictured Michael Hosea looking, but he acts exactly how I picture Michael Hosea acted. And whenever I go reread the book, I'm going to tell you I'm picturing Tom Lewis as Michael Hosea because he absolutely nailed this character, both with his innocence and his sincerity, but also his genuineness, his authenticity, and also just like his kind of quiet reserve, where Michael Hosea is this character where he's got a lot going on in his mind, and he's got things that he's battling with in his mind, but he always pauses to make the right decision. And that's because, biblically speaking, Hosea was a prophet, and Hosea, as a prophet, was doing something where he was literally playing out God's relationship to humanity and God's relationship to his people Israel, right? And so Michael Hosea is this very esteemed character where he basically makes no wrong choices throughout the entire story, and that's a hard part to play because he's basically perfect. But Tom Lewis, he absolutely crushed it. I thought it was a fantastic job. So good job, man. I mean, what a way to debut in film, because you just had like this leading part and you absolutely crushed it in regards to being this amazing character. I will say, there's going to be a lot of guys who have some high standards to live up to if they take their girlfriends to go see this film, because Michael Hosea is, like I said, he is basically a perfect figure. He doesn't really make any mistakes in this film or in this story at all, and that's because of what he represents, and that's we'll go more into that whenever we get to the biblical stuff. But Michael Hosea is such an idealized figure that, almost to the exact opposite extreme of Angel, it's almost hard to like him because he's so good. Like with Angel, she makes so many frustrating choices, you'd be tempted not to like her either. But with Michael Hosea, he's almost not relatable because he's so good and he always does the right thing. And these two people do not belong together because you have a guy who's doing nothing but the right thing and a girl who's doing nothing but the wrong thing, yet they're pursuing one another, and you would think that you wouldn't root for that relationship, because typically we're used to these romantic comedies where everybody comes together and it's like they just deserve each other, right? Because that's a very, like, you know, that's a Western ideal of romance. It's like two people come together who deserve one another, who are worthy of one another. That's not this story, because that's not the story of the gospel. We have this person who does not deserve anything, and this person who honestly deserves everything, and yet for some reason he's choosing to consistently pursue her. And so you would expect to not like either of these characters, but the actor and actress who play them, they make them very likable, and you're left rooting for this story, and that's why I left here in like a worshipful state, because it leaves you understanding the gospel so well. And I'll get to that later. Next, we have Famke Janssen as the Duchess. You might, I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name. Famke Janssen, I believe that is. But you might remember her from like the X-Men movies and stuff like that. Very popular actress. She plays the Duchess, who is not a likable character at all. I will say that Famke Janssen, she's a very likable actress, and so I found myself liking the Duchess more than I probably should have. I remember in the book, I hated the Duchess, and I still did not like the Duchess in this, because she's mean, and she's cruel, and she's terrible. But it's Famke Janssen. You're like, oh yeah, that's Jean Grey from the X-Men movies. I can't help but kind of like her a little bit. But she played the part really well. She played the cruelty very well. But she also had little moments where she would try, like, cause the Duchess is basically the owner of the whorehouse, right, of the brothel that Angel is working at. And she's very possessive and she's very manipulative, but she also has these moments where you see that she's trying to act like she cares for these girls, and that's really how she's keeping them there, you know? Like, she is pimping them out, and she is doing this stuff to try to convince them that she cares for them and that she's ultimately going to provide for them, and trying to give them hope that one day they can get out of here. But ultimately, she's not going to give them that. She's actually just siphoning them, and she's taking all the money they're getting and using it for herself. And so she's a very unlikable character, but the actress plays her in such a way to where you can't help but still be like, huh, I want to know more about this character. Yeah, I don't have much more to say about her, because she's really not as major of a character as you would probably think that she should be, or something like that. She gets a little bit more to do in the book, but that's because the book, you know, I mean, the audiobook is like 17 hours long. The movie that we just watched, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so they have to condense a little bit. And so the Duchess doesn't get quite as much to do, but the scenes that she's in, she is very effective. Then we have Logan Marshall Green as Paul. And, you know, it's been like 7 years since I read this book. And I couldn't remember every single detail, but I did remember one thing. I did not like Paul. Paul made me mad in the book. He was the character I liked the least. By the end of the book, I ended up liking him a little bit more, but I remember thinking this guy is terrible. And sure enough, the actor who plays him, Logan Marshall Green, he crushes it, because you do not like Paul for the majority of this movie. By the end, like I said, he has this really good character arc that's very satisfying and very nice. But man, you do not like Paul. And so that's a good thing. I mean, it's nothing against the actor. The actor's great. I've seen him in other movies, and he does fantastic. And he's a very likable guy. But he plays Paul exactly how I pictured him. He kind of shows up, and he's kind of like this drunk character. Basically, he's mourning the death of Michael Hosea's sister, Tess, who was Paul's wife. And he's mourning him, and he's not handling it well. And he is just this dirtbag of a character who you just want to punch in the face. And you get so excited when, spoiler alert, Michael Hosea does punch him in the face. You're like, yeah, it's about time. Because Paul is just not a good guy at the beginning of this. And he does so many despicable things that you're like, oh my gosh. But then, by the end of the story, once again, you have this satisfying arc that really emphasizes the name of this movie: redeeming love. And I'm not going to spoil that quite yet. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later on. I'm not totally sure. but Paul is one of those guys where you're like, man, seeing his character arc, it makes you like him so much more. The actor does a fantastic job. Paul is probably one of the most intriguing characters in the story, but he's also one of the most unlikable ones because he's so bad. Angel is a victim of her circumstances, and because of that, she becomes hard-hearted and does all this stuff. And Paul is very similar in that regard, but he goes even to a deeper degree to where he really is a villain of the story, even scarier to me than people like Duchess and stuff, because Paul thinks he's good for a lot of it, but he's so bad, and it takes a bunch of stuff to finally convince him that he is bad. And so I love the character of Paul. I thought he was fantastically played. And now let's move on to talk about Nina Dobrev as May, which is Angel's mother, and she's only present in the flashbacks, and then she has one other scene a little bit later on, but it's just like she's kind of just like showing up like in Angel's memory, kind of. She does a very good job. I thought she did fantastic. She's a likable actress. I'm trying to remember what other stuff I've seen her in. I think she was in a recent Netflix movie that I saw. I don't think I liked the movie very much, but I thought she did a really good job. But yeah, she plays Angel's mom, and Angel's mom is a sympathetic character as well because she is just wanting to care for her daughter, right? I mean, obviously the girl's name was not Angel yet. It was Sarah at the time. She's named Angel whenever she becomes a prostitute. But I thought she did a good job. I thought Nina did a really good job as May. I think that she played the character in a way where you understood her struggle. You understood where she's coming from. You understood her desire to care for her child and ultimately provide her child with a life that is worth living. And it's really sad, just the stuff she had to go through. And then she eventually dies. And that, once again, that's not really a spoiler because in the book, it's literally in the introduction. And so it's not even in chapter 1. And so, yeah, her character eventually dies. And it's sad, but it sets Angel on the trajectory to the future joy she'll have in Michael Hosea. And so in the end, it all works out. Then we have Liv Birch as Sarah Stafford, a.k.a. Young Angel. This actress is awesome. She did fantastic. I don't know how old she is, but she was playing Young Angel, and she just killed all of her scenes. I mean, she played this part where there's certain things where she has to go through some stuff as a kid. And at times, she is freaking out and she's yelling and screaming and crying as a child would do. But then as the story progresses and the flashbacks progress, you see this hardness coming about her to where she sees some other terrifying things and horrifying things. And she's sad and she's shaken up, but she's just quiet and she looks. And you realize, oh man, this girl has gone through some stuff. And you just see like this young actress. It's really heartbreaking to see it because this is just a young actress like playing this part. But you get to see the loss of innocence in this girl as she kind of resigns to her fate and realizes that she's not going to have a lot of joy in life. It's really sad, but the actress absolutely kills it. And then we have Eric Dane as Duke. That's the last person I'm really going to talk about here because he's another prominent figure who is very unlikable in the book. There's a lot of unlikable figures in this book, which I think is kind of the point because it's supposed to be based on the Bible. There's a lot of unlikable characters in the Bible. But Eric Dane, he did a great job as Duke. Very interesting, conniving figure where, honestly, I think you dislike Duke more than you dislike Duchess. I mean, Duchess is bad, but Duke, oh my gosh, this guy, once again, you just want to punch him in the face. You're like, this dude is bad. Like, he's... I want to talk about some stuff, but honestly, I don't want to get too crass in some of the stuff that he does. Like, he is just a bad guy. And the whole time, you're just, like, waiting for him to reach his downfall, and you're like, is he ever going to do it? Like, what's going to happen with him? And he gets out of the story for a while, and then he comes back, and he comes back with a vengeance, and he's so manipulative and so cruel and so sinful. You're just like, man, and the actor plays him well. He plays him as, like, this suave, sophisticated guy who's very charismatic, and you can see how he would manipulate both the general public, but also these young women and these girls and all this stuff. You can see this guy doing that. And I'm not saying that the actor does that, not at all. I'm saying that he plays the part really well where you could see how somebody like Duke would exist, and that's terrifying. And so, that all being said, all the actors, the actresses, they did a fantastic job, and I honestly cannot picture them having cast anybody better for these parts. I mean, I'm going to have to go reread the book, and I imagine I will be picturing all these actors in place of the people I formerly pictured whenever I read it formerly, in the beginning. Not in the beginning, 7 years ago. You know what I mean. Things that you should be concerned about. This is something that, these aren't necessarily negative things, but since this is a Christian YouTube channel and I'm doing a movie review of what is kind of a Christian movie, it's not as overtly Christian as you would think, even though it's based on a biblical story, and even though it's telling a biblical story that involves God, it involves the gospel message, it involves all these biblical things. It's not an overtly Christian film. And that all being said, I did want to give you caution in case you're wanting to take your kids to go see this or something like that. Things you might need to be aware of if you are concerned with these things. There is some cursing in the film. There are some intimate scenes between man and wife, and there's also some slightly revealing scenes, no nude scenes, but there are some slightly revealing scenes involving the character of Angel that you might want to be aware of. But ultimately, that being said, as a Christian, I did not have any problem with those scenes because I thought they were handled in a very tasteful manner. And what I mean by that is this. Even the scenes, there wasn't a lot of cussing in it, right? But even the scenes where there was cussing, it seems like they were being implemented to create a separation between two different worlds being presented in the movie. On one side, you have the secular, godless, sinful world. And, I mean, they weren't wanting to portray it in a full crassness because, I mean, keep in mind, they're wanting to still be respectful here and make it a pure movie. And so they're trying to portray how bad this world is. And so they don't go to full extremes. They just make it evident through just the language being used. And so people in that world, they're more likely to say more crass things. They're more likely to curse. They're more likely to say stuff like that. So that whenever you get to the world of like Michael Hosea and the stuff that he's trying to provide to Angel, it almost feels like you're in the Garden of Eden, right? It feels like totally separate, totally set apart. It feels holy. And so it didn't bother me that they had that cursing and stuff there because I think you're supposed to listen to it and you're supposed to be like, oh, huh. Like I thought this was a Christian film. I'm surprised a Christian film would have cursing. But I think it's supposed to set you off. You're supposed to be like, oh, okay. Like, we want to get out of that. We want to get to this other place. And so I think that was fine. And then the intimate scenes, they did linger on some stuff, specifically between Michael, Hosea, and Angel once they get married, because spoiler alert, they do get married. And honestly, I didn't have a problem with that either because the scenes did not feel like they were trying to encourage lust. The scenes actually felt like they were pure. They made it very clear this is between man and wife. There are times where just the content of the story kind of demanded scenes like this. And I remember there was a huge controversy. Whenever this book was first released, there was a controversy over scenes that Francine Rivers put in there because it's like, should you have included that? But I thought it was very tastefully handled, and it really didn't bother me that much that they included these scenes because it doesn't show anything perverse or anything. It just shows the purity and the joy of sharing that intimacy with one another in the bonds of marriage. And so I thought that was actually handled really well. There are some, like I said, revealing scenes, including revolving around the main actress playing Angel. And those scenes, I mean, it's nothing too crass. She's not like fully nude or anything like that, but they do show stuff enough to unsettle you, I think. And I think that's the purpose of them including that, because if they only just gave you shots of just like her neck up or something like that, I think that you would have understood what was going on, but you wouldn't have fully grasped the desperateness of the situation in which she found herself. And so I think them including scenes like that allowed you as the audience member to feel unsettled because you kind of wanted Michael Hosea to come in and help her out and give her this new life. And so I think that they tastefully did that. And once again, there was nothing too revealing, but they did include more than I was expecting going into the film just because I was expecting it as a Christian film. And so I wanted to give you just cautions against that if that's something that you are concerned about that you would just not want your kids to see. But I do want to reassure you, I think it was very tastefully done and handled in a way that is honoring to both the intimacy of marriage and also to the glory of God. And so I really was not bothered by that. People are going to have to just kind of follow their conscience there, though. And so maybe if you're concerned about that, see the movie first and then decide if you're going to take your kids or something to see it. But I thought it was handled fine. And now, at long last, let's get to my favorite part of this, where we get to talk about the biblical stuff in this story. And now we're going full spoilers because I want to be able to talk about this plot and talk about my favorite aspect of this whole film. My favorite aspect of the book, my favorite aspect of the movie is the fact that this is a retelling of the biblical story of Hosea. And if you know the story of Hosea, what it is that God shows up to this prophet named Hosea, and he tells him to get up and go marry this prostitute named Gomer. And he takes Gomer as his wife. So you have this holy man of God who is being sent to marry this lowly woman, right? A woman of ill repute. And he brings her to him. But the thing is, the woman's going to cheat on him again and again and again. And God says, I want you to go after her. I want you to purchase her and bring her back to you. And so you have this cycle where Hosea the prophet is sent to go get this prostitute, even though she doesn't deserve him, and bring her to him. And even though she doesn't deserve him, rather than living in gratitude, she runs away again, and she sleeps with somebody else, and she goes back to her harlotry. And then he says he's going to come and he's going to pay the price to bring her back. And what this is a picture of what God is constantly doing for his people Israel in the Old Testament. He comes and he redeems them, but then they run away to foreign gods, right? He goes to Egypt, he takes them out, but then they run to the foreign gods. They go to all these different people for help, and God's like, I just want you to look to me. And ultimately, the story of Hosea points forward to what Jesus would ultimately do. Whenever Jesus would come in the flesh and lay his life down to pay our debts and lift us up and purchase us from the adultery and from the harlotry unto which we'd sold ourselves. The story of Hosea is that God is Hosea and we are Gomer, right? The word Hosea, it means salvation, I think. I might have just made that up, but I'm pretty sure Hosea means salvation. I believe it's very similar to the name Joshua, which is also similar to the name Jesus. Jesus actually comes from the name Joshua, and it all means salvation because Hosea is a picture of who God is to us. And that's my favorite aspect of the story of redeeming love because it's all about the gospel. And so whenever you're watching Michael Hosea show up, man, oh man, he's an amazing figure. And that's what I was saying earlier. There are going to be some unlucky guys who take their girlfriends to go see this, and they're going to have a standard to live up to. Because from now on, people are going to watch this film, and girls are going to look at Michael Hosea, and they're going to say, I want a guy to love me like that. And now they're going to be looking at their boyfriends, and unfortunately, the boyfriends are like, oh, yikes, because Michael Hosea is a good guy. He is a great guy, and he consistently pursues her. He pursues her again and again and again, and she does so many frustrating things that are so annoying, right? She runs away from him 3 times in this film, and I remember that happening in the book, and I remember in the book, I was getting mad. The person I went and saw this in the movies with, they were also getting mad. They were like, this is so annoying. Why does she keep running away? And I'm like, that's the whole point, because that's exactly what we do with God. Right? That's how God probably feels because he's constantly pursuing us, yet we keep running away. And you'd think we would learn our lesson, yet there's always these different reasons we come up with to justify leaving him. Sometimes it's just because we want something different. That's what Angel does the first time she leaves. She says, I want my money from Duchess. I'm going to go back and get it. And Michael comes and he finds her and he says, you know what? You have the option. You can go get your money, or you can turn back around and walk the shorter distance back home. I'll be waiting for you there. And so he calls her back. The second time she leaves is because she doesn't feel worthy of him. And then the third time she leaves is because she doesn't feel worthy of him. And the thing is, she's not. Angel is not worthy of a guy like Michael Hosea. She says that again and again and again to him, and he admits that it's true. She's not worthy of him. But he chose her. He chose to love her. And that's the beauty of the gospel message, because we are not deserving of God, and we come up with reason after reason after reason to totally abandon him, to run away from him, to chase after our own sinful desires, yet he constantly pursues us again and again and again. And then sometimes he might do something different, like Michael Hosea the third time that Angel ran away. God might just wait. It's almost like the story of the prodigal son. You know, it might be past the point where before, you know, Michael Hosea, he's constantly chasing after Angel. Like if she runs away, he goes and finds her. He goes and finds her, goes and finds her. But this time, he's praying to God, and God tells him to just stay put. And so he waits for 3 years. He waits for 3 years, and eventually Angel comes back home. And then he walks up to her, she walks up to him. He takes the ring off his pinky finger and says, I've been waiting to give this back to you, puts it on there, and they kiss. That's the gospel message. Because we're always running away and God's chasing after us, chasing after us, chasing after us. But then sometimes there gets to a point where God might stop chasing. And that's scary. Because at that point, God's just hoping and waiting for us. And he says, you know what? They know where I stand. They know how I love them. Hopefully they come back. And that's sad, but that's the story. That is the story of the gospel, and it's so beautiful because Michael Hosea is this embodiment of this. And that's what I mentioned earlier. It's kind of scary because when you look at these two characters in this film, Angel, she has basically no redeeming qualities. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, the actress herself is she's amazing, and she makes Angel very likable. But if you just look at the character of Angel as she is, there is nothing about her that should be desirable to a man like Michael Hosea. But then whenever you look at Michael Hosea, there's everything likable about him. There's no unredeeming qualities. He's basically this perfect guy. And there's nothing about him that should be undesirable to Angel. Yet for some reason, Angel's the one who resists Michael, and Michael's the one who is pursuing Angel. Isn't that interesting, right? So you have Angel, no redeeming qualities, yet she is resisting the person who has everything she should want. And then you have Michael, who has nothing but redeeming qualities, yet he's pursuing the person he should have no concern for whatsoever. Once again, that is the gospel message. God has everything. We have nothing to offer him. Yet for some reason he pursues us, yet for some reason we resist him. Why would we do that? And that's why I'm saying I left this film in a worshipful sense, because they get that message across. I mean, at the end of this film, Angel is voicing a prayer where she's saying, God, I choose to believe. And through her belief, she eventually decides she's going to go be this whole new person. She changes her life around. She goes and starts helping other people. And eventually she hears that not only has she changed her life around, but Paul, the guy who abused her, misused her, mistreated her, who hated her, Paul has also turned his life around. And Paul has gotten married to the woman that she thought was best suited for Michael. And so we see this total twist where now she thought that Michael should have been with this one girl and they would have been a fit pair. But instead, that girl chose to be with Paul, who was unworthy of her. And so we see that Paul is actually an example for Angel, where she realizes, if y'all can have that, then I can too. And so she gets up, she goes back to Michael. And that is redeeming love. She has been redeemed because of his love. That is the story of the gospel. That's the story of the book of Hosea. That's the story of this movie. That's the story of the book. That's why I've always loved this story. And that's why I can't encourage you to see this movie enough. Please, please, please go see this movie. I thought it was so well done. I thought the gospel message was so well portrayed within it that whenever you leave, you don't just have an appreciation for Michael Hosea. You have an appreciation for Jesus if you've been watching closely enough. I think whenever you see a romance like this portrayed on screen, there's something real about it, because whenever you're looking at it, we've seen so many Hallmark movies, we've seen so many rom-coms, we've seen so many other romantic movies that get it so wrong, right? They make love just based off of a feeling. They make love based off of reciprocity and just like mutual give and take. Like, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. That's what culture presents love as. And so we've seen all those movies that do that. We've seen the TV shows that do that. We see all the CW TV shows that just have drama after drama after drama. And whenever you watch a movie like this, you can't help but wonder, why is this movie different from the other ones? And you realize that this relationship is totally unconventional. Angel does not deserve Michael Hosea's love, and he does not deserve her rebuke and her resistance. But instead, he constantly pursues her, and eventually she gives in and accepts that love. That's why this one's different, because in all the other romance movies, you have the meet cute where the people meet each other and they're kind of into each other, but they kind of hate each other at the same time, and eventually they work together. And it's because they both are people who think they deserve one another. They're both worthy of one another. And usually in the movie, at some point, they'll say, they'll have like that one friend who comes in and says, you know what? You deserve better. This movie is not concerned with that. People tell Michael, you deserve better. Paul tells Michael, you deserve better. Paul, who is a terrible person, he says to Michael, you deserve better. And you know what Michael does? He turns and he punches Paul. And he says, don't talk about her that way. I know who she is. I know what she is. And I'm pursuing her anyway. So back off. Don't talk bad about the woman that I have chosen to marry. That is the gospel. That's the whole point. And that's why I love this movie. That's why I cannot encourage you to see it enough. I hope to go see it again in theaters. I can't wait to get it on DVD. Yes, I'm old school. I still like DVDs. And I can't wait to reread the book. It was absolutely fantastic. I hope that you will let me know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, why not? Go see it. Let me know what you think about it. Go see it. Come back to this video, comment below, let me know. I'd love to talk with you about this. If you haven't read the book of Hosea, go read it. Not just the first 3 chapters, read the whole thing. If you haven't read the Gospels, go read the whole thing. If you haven't read this book, go read the whole thing. But yeah, go see the movie. Let me know what you thought. My name is David Tate. This is Now Let's Be Honest. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see y'all next time. Be sure to keep a smile on your face and don't let anybody steal your joy. Goodbye.
So your brother offered a sacrifice and God liked it better than yours. And the Lord is always telling you sin is crouching at your door. Now I know you want to take a big old rock and bop your brother on the side of the head, but just take a breath and hear me out, 'cause I got something you can do instead. You gotta watch and pray lest you fall into temptation.